To our latest video for week 6. So I'm doing one video this week with all 3 examples being done in the one video. So this week's focus is around interpreting graphs and tables. Alright, so if we have a look at our first example, we've got a column graph, which is also called a bar graph. Alright, so if we read it, it says this column graph represents the annual income of 5 different people, and then we've got 3 questions to answer to it. So what is Aravin's annual income? What is the difference between Jamie's income and Ashdev's income? And who earns the most? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to zoom in on this picture. It's a bit blurry. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just look at some of the important parts about this graph. So down the bottom here, so if I look down the bottom here, this tells me each individual person and their name. Okay, so there's a different colour for each person. And up the side here is what their income is. And so it goes up in 20,000 lots. So the first lot's 20,000, 40,000, 60,000, 80,000 and 10,000. Then if you've got something like this green one here that goes midway through it, that means it's going to be going at the halfway point here and be at around 90,000. Okay, so this guy here is around 90,000. This Jamie one, okay? Because it's about the halfway point. None of the others are like that. They're all on a line, which is really good. Okay, so that's just what we're going to look for. So let's start answering these questions. So the first one says, what is Aravin's annual income? Now if I look here, and Aravin's the blue one, and his column goes all the way up to 60,000, which means he earns $60,000 a year. And so that's my answer, pretty straightforward and simple. The next one I'm going to look at is what is the difference between Jamie's income and Ashdev's income. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write their incomes separately. So I'm going to put Jamie here and then Ashdev down here. Okay, so if I look up here, Jamie's at 90,000. So Jamie earns 90,000 a year. And then I go back up and look at Ashdev. Ashdev is the red one and the lowest one at 40,000. So I've got one more step for this question because it wants to know what the difference is. Okay, so to find the difference, I'm going to go 90,000, take away 40,000, which will give me 50,000. So the difference between their yearly or annual income, as it's called, is 50,000, so that's quite a lot of money. So our last one is who earns the most. So if I look at here, I've got to find the bar that goes up the highest, which is Stefan here, who hits the top part at $100,000. So Stefan, and I'm going to say how much he earns as well. So that is that question completed. So we've explained who earns what, and answered each question as it should be while looking at our graph. So our second example is a pie graph or a pie chart. And so this pie chart is talking about the amount of money spent per year on car-related expenses. So they've obviously done some math and found that roughly half of the money they spend on their car every year is petrol. So this guy here is roughly 50%. Okay, now I can't really tell the green one, which is insurance, or the red one, which is red, because it's not really very straightforward. But if I look at this maintenance one, it's a quarter of the circle, which means it is at 25%. So we definitely know for sure 2 sections and how much they are. So that's good. So I'm just looking at that straight off, because what this will do later is now I'm going to answer my questions. So I've got 3 questions to answer. So what is the largest expense each year for a car? What percentage of the car's expenses is devoted to maintenance? And if the car owner spends $3,000 per year on petrol, what is the total amount spent on the car each year? So if we go up to our first question, so what is the largest expense? And straight off, we can simply say petrol because it takes up half of the graph. So I'm simply going to write petrol. Okay? So then our next one is, what percentage of the car's expenses is devoted to maintenance? So this comes back to that where we've sort of said, oh, half the circle is this and a quarter of the circle is maintenance. So it'll be 25% because we've looked and gone, it's a quarter of the circle and that's 25%. Okay, and the last question is, if the car owner spends $3,000 per year on petrol, what is the total amount spent on the car each year? Alright, so petrol is half of the cost. So if he's spending $3,000 on petrol and that's half of his cost, to find out what it would be for all of it, we're going to go 3,000 times 2. And that just takes us up to what the full amount would be. So it's $6,000. Okay, and it's like if it turned around and asked us what percentage of, how much would we spend on maintenance then? We would just go divided by 4 to find out what this would be. Alright, so we just look and we go, how can we get it up to 100%? So if petrol is 50%, how do we get it up to 100%? We double it. And that's what we've done here. And that is example 2. So now we've got our third example, which is a table. So for the table, we've got 3 different cities and years with 5 years different between them. So it says the following table shows the population of some small towns over a 10-year period. Okay, so now it's got individual questions. First one is, what was the population of Exton in 2010? Exclaimer, I didn't make any of these names up. So Exton is, so if we look and we go, okay, 2010, I followed across along here, it's 320. So you would just answer 320 because that's what the population was. The next one was, what was the population of Kelkville in 2015? So here's Kelkville. I'm going to follow it down, go across to 2015, and it's 270. Okay, next one is, what was the population of Statsland in 2005? So here's Statsland, go across to 2005, and it's 300, which is good. Okay, so now the next one is, which town's population decreased over time? So what you would do for this, I'm just going to erase these lines I've put through, is I'm going to look at each of these and go, okay, so let's start Statsland and work the other way. So here Statsland goes from 300 to 310, and then 390. So it went up, then it went down. So that's not satisfying the decrease because we've had one go up. Then we've got Kelkville, that's 200, then 240, then 270. That one's actually gone up every time. So it's not really doing what it's asking. And the last one, Exton, is 400, then 320, then 180. So that one has decreased every time. So who has decreased? Exton. Okay. And the last one, which town's population increased over time? So when we were looking at this, we noticed Kelkville went up every time. So that will be our answer to who increased every time as well. And that is it for our examples for the interpreting graphs and tables.